Now let's welcome in Evan Giddings, 95.7 The Game in San Francisco, host and producer there, who I believe has joined us here on Bet Nation before. Zach Wolchuk alongside Eric Chiofalo, and Evan's the man. Evan, how are you? It's a week removed from what happened to your 49ers. Have you recovered? I mean, how has this week been for you?
First of all, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to join you guys again. No rest on the Sabbath, and it has been a long week in San Francisco for a lot of people. I think an appropriately timed rainstorm is just coming through the Bay Area, and everyone's just kind of trying to drown their sorrows. It's been a therapeutic week, but one that everyone sort of has rallied together and trying to basically figure this thing out. Where do we go from here? What happens? Because anytime you get to the precipice of the mountaintop and you don't quite get to peek over or enter the promised land, you're left wondering what the hell happened. And it was an extremely good game. It was one of the best Super Bowls I've watched in my lifetime, but it doesn't make the loss any easier.
Is Steve Wilks being scapegoated here, do you think? Or is this something that was a decision made weeks in advance? Kyle Shanahan knew win or loss, Steve Wilks is not coming back as the DC.
Yeah, I think this had been coming for quite some time. I believe it was week 7 against Minnesota when they lost. Kyle Shanahan undressed Steve Wilks at the podium on the Monday Night Football game due to a blitz, an all-out blitz that he called at the half, which resulted in a touchdown for the Vikings. And from that point on, it felt like there was just something not right between Wilks and Shanahan. And quite honestly, based on the way that things ended, he should have fired him after week 7. I think Steve Wilks should have been fired then or after the bye week, because clearly these guys did not see eye to eye. So much so that in the Super Bowl in overtime, you're seeing Kyle Shanahan call timeouts because he doesn't like what his defense is doing. That's someone that is not in full trust of who is calling defensive plays. So Steve Wilks, this was a long time coming. I don't think he was necessarily scapegoated, just because I don't think he should have been hired in the first place. Like Kyle Shanahan either didn't do his homework or didn't believe in what Steve Wilks I think could bring to the table, because Wilks is a guy that historically has loved to get aggressive. He's more of a Steve Spagnuolo than a non-blitzing, passive, conservative type of play caller that Kyle Shanahan and his previous defensive play callers has been. So I think this was a natural breakup, a natural divorce that we'd seen coming for quite some time. And I guess you're just left wondering, okay, who's to blame? Because Wilks' defense, even though they've been poor in the division and the conference rounds, was not that bad in the Super Bowl. So I think he's maybe being pegged as a scapegoat, but this was something that was coming for a long time.
So where do they go now? I mean, obviously, a lot of these coordinators have jobs. I know Brandon Staley's a name that's come up. There's some fans that have floated out. Do you make a call to a Bill Belichick or a Mike Vrabel? What's the word on the street right now? It's who is going to be the new defensive coordinator in San Fran.
As much as people would love Belichick, as much as people would love Vrabel, I don't see either of those two names coming to San Francisco, because those guys, specifically Belichick, demand power. And what have we seen over the last year? Kyle Shanahan needing his coordinator on defense to submit. And that's not either of those guys' MO. So I think Brandon Staley of the three would be the most likely to me. I know that his time in Los Angeles ended pretty unceremoniously, and a lot of people have some doubts about him because of his head coaching. But as a defensive coordinator, he's relatively proven. I think there's a lot of things he does well when he's given the personnel and talent. I don't think he had that necessarily with the Chargers. I also don't think that he was just fit for that job in the first place when he got hired. So I think someone like Brandon Staley would be a fit for the 49ers, because he's someone that can acquiesce to Kyle Shanahan in the way that Shanahan wants, but also just schematically, I think would be able to kind of conform to what the 49ers want to do. And I just don't see Belichick or Vrabel being either of those two type of guys to bow down to someone like Shanahan in the way that he'd like.
Evan Giddings, 95.7 The Game in San Francisco, with us here in Bet Nation, live from Dallas, Texas, breaking down this Super Bowl. And, man, the San Francisco 49ers, Brandon Ayuk, he's coming out of the game. I mean, the entire offense struggled. Nobody performed well. All of the offensive Avengers, from McCaffrey to Ayuk to Kittle to Samuel, nobody really showed up or stepped up on Super Bowl Sunday. But Brandon Ayuk is coming out, or at least his family is, in frustration. What do you make of that? And is that a common sentiment? Are guys frustrated in that locker room? I mean, other than just losing?
I think it's impossible not to be, and this is how I would break it down, because they've made 4 conference title games the last 5 years, obviously their second Super Bowl loss. The first Super Bowl defeats, and even the NFC Championship game last year, I think were tests of their resiliency, because there were reasons why they lost that game. You could go down the list, or there's the quarterback in 2019, last year the quarterback injury in the NFC Championship game. I don't think they were the better team in the loss in the NFC title game to the Rams, but this one stings because I believe that they were the better team, and I think the 49ers think that they were the better team. So while the last loss in the Super Bowl is a test to their resiliency, I think this loss will test their commitment. And what I mean by that is Brandon Ayuk, he's Exhibit A. Already his family talking about how whether he could be here, could not be here, should he have gotten the ball more, or should he have been a bigger part of the game plan. There's a lot of questions and more what-ifs about this game than there's been about any of their postseason defeats. And that is something that can kind of occasionally fracture locker rooms. You think back to 2014, the play at the goal line for Seattle. The Seahawks have never recovered as a franchise after that throw. You think about the Falcons in 2017, blowing a 25-point lead. They have not recovered as a franchise after that Super Bowl. So the 49ers, while I think they're in a better position, they have a lot of their talent coming back. They got guys under contract, good front office, good head coach, everything you need in an emerging quarterback. This will test their commitment to each other more than any of their other postseason defeats. And that's a big question that I have, if that commitment is strong enough.
What was your biggest takeaway from the game as to what went wrong, the most head-scratching decision? I know afterwards it was all about the decision to take the football in overtime, and then some of the players not appearing to really understand what the rules were. And then you look at the other side, Kansas City seemed very prepared. They knew they were going to go for 2 if they got the second possession no matter what to try and win the game. So it seemed like there was a little bit of a difference in coaching prep there.
Yeah, I think there was, to me, it was kind of a coin flip to take the ball or not. But obviously with the reaction that the Chiefs had, like they'd been preparing pretty much since, I guess, the rule was created for them in that game with the Bills in the postseason a few years ago. They've been preparing to take the ball, or to defer, I should say, for the last 3+ years. So when the moment that the Niners basically played into their hands, it was like they'd already won the Super Bowl. And from that perspective, you could say that that was a jolt of momentum for the Chiefs, and it was clearly the wrong decision because it played into their hands. But in the moment, I didn't necessarily see it one way or the other. I think it's just kind of result-based. What did not look good was Kyle Shanahan coming out after the game and essentially saying we were playing for the third possession. That is not a good look, however you slice it, even if that's your MO. Hiding behind the analytics, I don't necessarily have a problem with. I think there's regression models you can run to say whether you should or shouldn't take it. But the fact of the matter is all of the sound that came out after the game just piles on top of Shanahan, whether it's his play calling, throwing the ball 8 of the first 9 plays out of the half, taking the ball out of overtime and only coming up with 3 points, and then, of course, allowing the Chiefs to go down and score and win the Super Bowl. It's not a good look for Kyle Shanahan, even though I think you can make the case that that was the best big game that he had coached, going for it down 3, on the plus side of the field on 4th down, trusting a rookie kicker to make multiple 50-yard field goals. Kyle Shanahan, I thought, did coach a damn good game, but of course, when you lose such a tight affair in overtime, there are going to be things that are nitpicked in relation to your previous failures, which of course have followed. And from 19, whether it's the coordinating game with the Falcons, which is sometimes unfair, I think, there are breadcrumbs that would lead people to believe that this game falls squarely on Kyle Shanahan's shoulders, even if the defensive coordinator was the one to be fired. So the 49ers are in an interesting predicament because you can't fire him. He's under contract for, I think, 4 more years. But is he the guy that can't get over the hump, or is it the team or the franchise themselves that has now lost 3 straight Super Bowls?
Well, that'll certainly be the question in the dark cloud hanging over him and this franchise until they absolutely get it done. But Evan, we appreciate the time very much, sir. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll catch up with you in this off season. We'll track what these Niners are up to, making some roster moves and whatnot. Appreciate the time, brother. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too, fellas. No problem. Anytime you need. Thank you.